Many of you have seen Bobbie Anne here before. Most of you know that Bobbie Anne's been fighting the good fight up in Albany. And if it wasn't for people like Bobbie Anne, who knows where we'd be? In a concentration camp? I don't know. So with that said, let's give a warm welcome to Bobbie Anne Cox.
For having me. Before I start, I just want to introduce Anne, who is going to be doing a visual rendition tonight of what we're going to be talking about. So I don't know if you want to just introduce yourself. Do you want, I can give you this down?
I just say, I'm a cartoonist and illustrator.
I can take that. Hang on one second. Okay, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. I'm a cartoonist and illustrator, and what I do here is to kind of take cartooning to a larger canvas. And so I'm going to try to visualize what Bobbie talks about and when you all share ideas of moving forward. Because the idea is if you can see something, you can make it happen. And we often think in pictures and we remember. If you see a picture, you might call up more of the conversation than if you were reading a bunch of minutes. That's kind of, it's quick and appealing, and that's...
Have you ever had your art on a billboard truck?
I've never been on a billboard truck. That'll be next. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Of course I do. Okay. Okay, great. Thank you for coming out tonight, everybody. So I was here about a year ago, maybe 13 months ago. I don't know if any of you were here when I came last time, but a lot has happened in the past 13 months. So I'm an attorney. I'm based in Westchester County, and after I was here about a year ago talking about everybody trying to stand up for our rights and preserve our Constitution and push back against the machine in Albany that seems to be ever present and ever overreaching, I decided to bring a lawsuit in April of this past year against Governor Kathy Hochul, against her Department of Health, against the Commissioner of Health, Mary Bassett, and against the Health Planning Council over their isolation and quarantine regulation. So what that regulation said was that the Department of Health could pick and choose which New Yorkers they could lock up or lock down. They could have locked you up in your home, or they could have locked you up in a facility of their choosing. So you would not have had a say in where you went. They could have kept you in lockup or lockdown for however long they wanted. There was no provision in that regulation that said that there was a time limit. So it could have been days, it could have been weeks, it could have been months. There was no age restriction, so they could have taken you, they could have taken your child, your grandchild, your grandparent. There was no way for you to get out of quarantine once they put you in quarantine. So what I mean by that is when we were having oral arguments in front of the judge last spring, the judge asked the Attorney General's office, so let's say you take a family and let's say you put them into quarantine. Let's say you put them into a facility, a hospital. How do they get out? And there was a really pregnant pause as the Attorney General's office representative thought about it. And then he said, well, I guess they could hire a lawyer and they could sue. So there was no due process in this regulation. The regulation also said that the Department of Health could tell you what you could and couldn't do while you were in isolation or quarantine. So if you let your mind run wild for a minute there, that could have meant anything. They could have told you when you could eat, what you could eat, if you could eat. They could have told you when you could sleep, how long you could sleep, where you could sleep, what medications you could and couldn't take, what drugs or vaccines you could and couldn't take or had to take. It was very broad language. They also had language in that regulation that said that they could use local law enforcement to help them enforce their orders of isolation and quarantine. So you could have gotten a knock on your door and it could have been the local police local sheriff, saying, sorry, you need to come with me. I have an order from the health department. You need to quarantine. They didn't need to prove that you were sick. They didn't need to prove that you had a communicable disease. They didn't need to prove that you were exposed to a communicable disease. They just had to think, maybe you were, maybe you weren't. And they were able to lock you up or lock you down. So obviously you think about that and you think, wow, that really was ripe for abuse, right? They could have done whatever they wanted to us. So I got together with a group of New York State legislators, Senator George Borrello, Assemblyman Chris Tague, Assemblyman Mike Lawler, together with a citizens group that I'm involved with, Uniting New York State. And we brought this lawsuit against the governor and the Department of Health. And our argument was the governor and the Department of Health don't have the power to do this. They are in the wrong branch of government, right? The governor is the executive branch of government. The agencies, whether it's the health department, the education department, the transportation department, those are all departments in her branch of government, right? They're all executive branch of government functions. And they don't have the power to make law. And that's what that was. They were calling it a regulation, but really it was a law. And in fact, that regulation conflicted with existing New York State law, Section 2120 of the Public Health Law, which we've had for 70 years in New York, already says what you do if there is somebody in our community who has a communicable disease and they are not conducting themselves in a proper manner. But that law, which we've had for 70 years, has a lot of due process steps built into it to protect the citizens. And that law was being really overruled by the governor and her Department of Health and this regulation that they decided to make. And you can't do that. You can't have the executive branch of government making a regulation that overrides a law. We have 3 branches of government. It's laid out very clearly in our Constitution. 3 branches, judicial, executive, and legislative. They all have their own powers, and they're all supposed to be equal. So when one of them takes the power of the other one and gives it to themselves, that's tyranny, and that's not allowed. So in July, the New York State Supreme Court Judge, Ron Plotz, up in Cattaraugus County, ruled in our favor. He struck down that regulation. He said it's unconstitutional. You cannot do this. You do not have the power to make a regulation that conflicts with a law. Wrong branch of government. And he struck it down. It's null, it's void, it no longer exists as of right now. So within a week, the Attorney General filed a notice of appeal. They want to appeal the decision, but oh, wait a second, we had elections on November 8th. So you know, Governor Hochul and Attorney General Letitia James were running for election, so there was actually no moving forward with the appeal until last week, after the election, when they sent me a notice and they asked me, hey, would you agree to give us an extra 2 months to file our appeal? So they had 6 months to file their appeal, which they didn't do, and then they asked me, can we get 2 more months? So of course, I checked with Senator Borrello, Assemblyman Tague, Assemblyman Lawler, he's actually now Congressman Lawler, and we filed an objection because they asked the court, hey, give us 60 more days to do this appeal. We filed our objection. We said, no, you had 6 months. You had plenty of time. So the court did grant them 60 days. So they have 60 days more to perfect their appeal, it's called, basically file their appeal papers. So let's see what happens. But I want everybody here to know this story because this is what we're dealing with in Albany. We're dealing with a governor and an attorney general who have the audacity to, first of all, write a regulation like that. That was written by the Department of Health at the behest of the governor. Okay, so first of all, they wrote this atrocious unconstitutional reg, and then when the court struck it down, now they're fighting to get it back. And they're using your tax dollars to do it. Okay? So that's an example of what's going on in Albany. We also have examples of what's going on with the legislature in Albany. Now, the legislature has a lot of power because that's our lawmaking branch. Those are the people, the senators and the assembly members that we elect every 2 years. We just had an election November 8th. And there are some pretty scary bills right now being proposed in the New York State legislature. I'm going to mention a couple of them just so you're aware, because of course the media doesn't cover any of this, right? Mainstream media doesn't cover any of this. So there's a bill right now it's being proposed by Democrat Assemblyman Gottfried. It allows minors of any age to give consent, their own consent, to any medical procedure to be done. The parents don't have to know about it. The parents don't have to give consent. And in fact, the bill says that if the parents object and the child says, I don't care, I want to do it anyway, the medical facility or the doctors or whatever will follow the child's direction over the objection of the parent, but you get to still pay the bill.
What age is that again?
Any age.
Any age? 3 years old?
For any medical procedure.
Who pays for that? Age?
Minor child, you pay for it.
I know, who pays for the medical procedure?
They're going to send you they're going to send you the bill.
Oh, the parent pays for that?
Yeah, and if the insurance, and if there is insurance, the insurance company is not allowed to tell you what you're paying for when they send you the bill on your copay and such. Okay, so that is a complete abolition of parental rights right there. Right there. All of these bills that I'm going to mention are on the website for Uniting New York State. So the flyers that are getting passed around has the website for Uniting New York State. Please take a look. And you can also sign up on the website for free weekly newsletters that go out to all the members. But on the Uniting New York State website, it's unitingnys.com. You will find a list of these bills. I'm not going to go through all of them. I mean, there are so many, but I'm going to hit you up with a couple. So the number was A6616 and proposed by Democrat Nolan. And it requires comprehensive sexuality instruction for students in grades kindergarten through 12. They're going to start teaching sex ed to your kindergartners through 12th grade. So you, again, have your parental rights being abolished because you don't get to decide when you teach your child about sex ed. The New York State Legislature gets to decide. Okay. Then we have A8378 by Democrat Dinowitz. And that is a mandatory COVID shot for all kindergarten through 12 students to attend school in New York State. We've got, A8398, also from Democrat Dinowitz, eliminates the ability to obtain a religious exemption from vaccine mandates for work and school. We've got Hoylman, Democrat Senator Hoylman, S6495, mandatory COVID-19 shot for college students, all college students in New York State. Hoylman really, he has a nice relationship with the pharmaceutical companies, I think, because he's got a lot of bills proposed here that have to do with vaccines, mandatory flu shot for all kindergarten through 12 students in the state of New York. The list goes on and on, unfortunately. Again, you can find that list on the website, unitingnys.com. But the point here is that we've got a really big problem because the Democrats are the ones that are proposing these horrific bills. Not one of these bills is being proposed or supported or co-sponsored by a Republican in the New York State Assembly or the New York State Senate. So the Democrats have an agenda, right? If you read through these proposed laws, you can see that there is an agenda here. And it's a pretty scary agenda. And the problem is that they have a supermajority in our New York State legislature. They have a supermajority in the state Senate. They have a supermajority in the state Assembly. They have the governor's mansion, and they have the attorney general's office. So it's an uphill battle to fight against this because all you can do without having the ability to have another party, the Republicans, vote it down because they don't have enough members in the Senate or the Assembly right now, is that you have to have a voice. We, the people, have to have a voice. We, the people, have to speak up. And I heard somebody that before, when we were doing announcements before we began, I heard somebody say, you need to go and you need to reach out to your legislator, your New York State Senator, your New York State Assembly member, and say, hey, this bill, I do not want you voting for this bill, or this one, or that one, or this one, and here's why. If they don't hear from you, they don't know that their job is in jeopardy, okay? And they really, really, really don't want their job to be in jeopardy because do you know what they did when everybody was celebrating Christmas and Hanukkah and the New Year's? 2 days before Christmas, they called a special session because the regular session in Albany ends the first week of June. So the legislators, it's a part-time job, right? They start in January, they go to June, the first week of June, and then it's done for the year. So they call a special session in December, in the middle of Hanukkah, 2 days before Christmas. And so they said, okay, everybody come back into session, come back to Albany. We have to vote on this really important law. Okay? Now, it wasn't a law about extending the gas tax relief that they had put in place. No, they were going to let that expire. It wasn't a proposed law to talk about reforming bail reform, which has caused, crime in New York State to skyrocket like never before. Nope, they weren't doing that. They called a special session to vote on a law that would give themselves another 30% pay raise. They just got a 30% pay raise in 2018, in case you didn't know that. So before 2018, their pay was $79,500 a year for their part-time job. 2018, the Democrats proposed, and it passed, a bill for a 30% pay raise. It went up to $110,000 a year. And now, another 30% pay raise, so now they're making $142,000 a year for legislating from January to June. They have benefits, they have per diems, they have, all this other stuff. So the other thing that they did, while everybody is, struggling to pay bills and paying ridiculous prices to fill up your car with gas and your heating for your homes, record high inflation, interest rates going through the roof, but that's okay. They needed a 30% pay raise on your backs. That same law, because of course it passed because the Democrats have a supermajority, so despite the fact that not one Republican voted for that, it didn't matter. It passed with flying colors. They also put in that law that if you are a member of the New York State Legislature, you cannot have a job outside being a New York State legislator if you make more than $35,000 a year. So they have now basically made it impossible for a farmer, for a dentist, for a lawyer, for an insurance agent, for common people like you and me to hold the position of a New York State legislator. What they have done is they have made that job a career politician's job. Everybody that serves in the New York State legislature now is going to be a career politician. They're not going to be common people who work alongside us, live alongside us, experience our struggles, and then go to Albany and make laws to try and help better society. No, no, no. Now, they're a bunch of political elites. And any law that they pass, they will not have to suffer under, because they're not going to have a job or a business or a career outside of being a career politician in Albany. So it is a tremendous loss for New Yorkers, for the citizens, for the voters, because now we've got people sitting there in Albany who have no idea the implications of the laws that they are going to pass upon us, because they're sheltered in their, yeah, exactly. So it's a really big problem. It's a really big issue. All of this is going on. The media is not covering it. It's destroying our state. We have an exodus from New York that we've never seen before. People are so fed up with the corruption, with the, I don't have to lay it out, that they're leaving in droves. And what happens when they leave, when all the hard-working, common sense people leave because they're fed up with all of this, our pool gets smaller and smaller. Our pool of people to push back with gets smaller and smaller. The answer is not to leave the state. And a lot of people after November 8th came to me and said, oh, we should start another party. We need a third party. That's not the answer either, because it's going to detract from what we've got already there, right? What we need to do is we need to unify the people of the state. We need to organize ourselves, and then we need to act, and we need to push forward, and we need to get some stuff done here. Now, our allies seem to be, if you take a look at the good bills, I call them good bills and bad bills. If you look at some of the good bills that are proposed in Albany right now, also on the unitingnys.com website, I'm going to read off a couple of them just to share them with you. They are, bless you. Okay, so there is a bill that's currently proposed in the Assembly by Assemblyman Republican conservative DiPietro. It establishes strict liability for injuries caused by required immunizations. Also proposed in the Assembly by Republican conservative Assemblyman DiPietro, and this bill has a sister bill in the New York State Senate proposed by the Minority Leader Rob Ort. This relates to exempting private and parochial schools and daycare centers from immunization requirements. There's the old ones, but again, if you go on unitingnys.com, when the new bill numbers come out, it'll all be updated on the website. There's a whole list of, what I call good bills, common sense bills. And if you take a look at them, they're all proposed by Republicans. So it seems to me that although this should not be a political thing, because I'm not even Republican, it should not be a political thing, it seems to have been divided into a political thing, right? It seems like the Republicans in the New York State Assembly and the New York State Senate are proposing laws that everybody sitting here tonight would want to see passed, right? The problem is they don't have the power to do it because they don't have enough numbers in the New York State Senate or the New York State Assembly. So what do? Well, we need to build an alliance. We need to put people in Albany who represent what we want, what we need, what we stand for. We can't just keep going along and sticking our heads in the sand and thinking that, oh, it's going to be okay, something's going to change. It's not going to change. Take a look at the bills. Take a look at the bills. Don't believe me. Go on the New York State website. Go on the New York State Senate website. Go on the New York State Assembly website and look through the bills yourself. They're all there. It's all public information. Call up your representatives. Call up your New York State Senator. Call up your New York State Assembly member and say, hey, can you give me a list of the bills that you're proposing or you're co-sponsoring this session? I want to see them. And read them. You don't have to be a lawyer to read them. They're pretty straightforward language for the most part. Read them. If you like them, great. Tell them, hey, this is great. I really like this. I want you to push this. You know, how can I help get support for this bill? And if you don't like it, tell them that too. I don't like this. And if you push this, if you vote for this, if this passes, I'm going to make sure that I don't vote for you and none of my friends vote for you and none of my family vote for you. You know, we have to have an organizational outreach and we need to build an alliance with the politicians in power who are on our side and believe in the Constitution, believe in parental rights, believe in the family unit. If we don't build this alliance with the good politicians, we're going to be in even worse trouble than we are right now. Okay, we just saw, what's today? Today's Thursday. We just saw yesterday, the day before, the governor there's an open seat in the Court of Appeals right now in New York State, which is our highest court. The chief judge stepped down the end of the summer, and the Constitution says that the governor can appoint a new chief judge, which she chose a current judge from the appellate division, Hector LaSalle, and she said, this is my pick. This is who I want to put on the court as the chief judge. And the Democrats shot him down. They wouldn't even let him get out of the Judiciary Committee to go to the Senate for a vote, which is what the Constitution says has to happen, because they thought he was too middle of the road. He was too conservative, they were saying in the hearings yesterday. So, just in case anybody doesn't realize, the courts are not supposed to be political. The courts are not supposed to be politicized, yet you had Senator Hoylman, who's a Democrat and chairs that committee, the Judiciary Committee in the Senate, sitting there saying, I want the court to go in a different direction. You know, they didn't want somebody that they were calling conservative, who's really just a moderate, who's really just following, you know, judges don't make law. Judges adjudicate on the laws that are made by the legislature, right? So it's things like this that if we don't start to come together, organize, and build this coalition, if you will, with the politicians who are in power right now, who are on our side and believe in the Constitution and want it to be upheld, we're going to be in really big trouble. The next election for New York State Senate and New York State Assembly is in November of next year. And you might think, oh, God, that's so far away. No, it is not so far away. Because what we need to do between now and then is, first of all, find people, like people sitting in this room, who are willing to step up and run for office. You know, if you have somebody, if you live in a district where you have a representative who's backing these horrible bills, then we need somebody to stand up and run against them. Whether it's in a primary or in the general election, we need to organize and help that person win their election. It's the only way we are going to get out of this mess. Now, people say, oh, elections, they're all rigged, it's all... The election laws in New York State, in the United States, the election laws, as per the federal constitution, every state gets to make their own election laws. So right now, with the supermajority that they have, the Democrats are loosening election integrity with every bill that they pass into a law, right? They just last week, there was a bill that was being debated on the Senate floor to have mobile voting centers. Okay, so they're going to drive around and anybody could just come up to the mobile center and vote. I'm not sure how you're going to verify the person is registered to vote or a citizen or can vote or what, I mean, it's unbelievable. There's a bill currently sitting in the Senate that would allow people to register to vote the same day as the election. So these are the kinds of things that are going on in Albany. And to push back against the machine, which, everybody's not just been asleep at the wheel, but because the media won't cover it, everybody's been in the dark, right, for years. And now we wake up and we have bills that are gaining speed that are taking away parental rights and children can decide on their own medical anything. Including, yes, I've had this question 1,000 times, including having a sex change. Absolutely, positively, that falls under that bill. Hormone blockers, all this stuff, yes, that's part of that bill. Okay, so I'm hoping that I'm expressing with the urgency of needing to stand up and do something and take action. And last year, leading up to the election, after I had won my case, in July, I was going around giving speeches, presentations, interviews, trying to alert voters to that regulation and let them know, by the way, the governor and the governor and the Attorney General's office filed a notice of appeal. They intend to appeal this. They want that power back, right? And I said, get out and vote. Get out and vote. But it didn't really happen that way because look what happened on November 8th. Everybody was expecting a big red wave and we got a little faucet drip, right? We're still, we can't just blame it on that. We can't just blame it on voter fraud. That people, it is an issue, Chip. It is an issue, Chip. However, it can be overcome if people actually organize and do the things that need to be done. If you have election poll workers en masse, what do you think is going to happen? If you have people going out and registering other people to vote, what do you think is going to happen? In New York State, something that the Democrats are very good at is ballot harvesting. Okay? It's not illegal because they didn't make it illegal, right? You have to play by the rules, right? So pointing the finger and saying, this and that, no. Learn what the rules are and play by the rules. It's the only way that you're going to win. The initiative that I'm working on now, and that I want everyone to start working on now, is building that bridge between the local and the state, Republican infrastructure, the party, the establishment, whatever you want to call it, and the people, the voters, the candidates that want to run, right? If we don't, there's a gap right now. Like you're saying, there's a disconnect. We have to bridge that gap. Otherwise, you're right. It's going to be, two different, which is what happened this past election cycle, right? You saw them swimming in their world, and then the voters swimming in this world, and there was no connection, and so look what happened. There was an amicus brief that was written, fabulous brief, written by Assemblyman Andy Goodell, who's an attorney as well. He represents Chautauqua County, which is up in western New York near Lake Erie. And it was signed on to, he's the pro tempore in the Assembly, so he's the number 2 Republican in the New York State Assembly. It was signed onto by Will Barkley, who's the number 1 Assemblyman, top-ranking Republican. He's the Republican leader in the Assembly, and Joseph Giglio, another Assemblyman from that area of New York. And the legislators that were part of my quarantine lawsuit, or are part because it's still going, absolutely believe in the Constitution, believe in what we believe in. My point is that we need more people like you, but we need to organize, because people like you are not going to be able to break through when there's not that groundswell of support. And if we can bridge that gap with those politicians who are in office, and I don't care if they're Democrat and they think like us and they're working for us, great, great. Come join the fight. I haven't seen any yet. I haven't met any yet, and I've been looking for a while and reaching out to them. None of them wanted to talk to me about my quarantine case when I was going legislator by legislator asking who wants to support this lawsuit, right? All of the legislators that are either on the case or wrote an amicus brief or have come to events to support the case or a fundraiser to help raise money because I'm doing the case pro bono, they're all Republican. And it's not because I only asked Republicans to get involved. No, it's because the Democrats wouldn't talk to me about it, right? Which tells you something. So I don't care what party they are, but we need more people like you, and we need more people in the groundswell to support and organize and properly push forth people like you. And we need to connect with those good politicians who are already in power, because then it makes the job that much easier, and it makes our voices that much stronger, and it makes everything much more powerful to come back with, right? If we're all working in our own little circles, our own little pockets, you saw what happened. I'm sure you worked your tail off. I know other candidates who worked their tail off and didn't make it, right? Because there wasn't the synergy, the gap was not bridged. And I'm here to bridge the gap. I can't really do it by myself, but I have spoken with those good politicians in Albany, and they are willing to do this. They are willing to have a joint venture. They are willing to have the groundswell and organize and do it together. But we need people to get involved. I'm not trying to say that one political party is going to save the state, because it hasn't yet. So clearly it's not going to by itself. What I'm saying is, we, the people, whether you're an individual or you're the leader of a grassroots group, or you're the leader of a citizens group, or you're a member in one of the groups, everybody has to have the same goal. And at the end of the day, what that goal is to put into office people that understand the Constitution, will defend the Constitution, which means that our rights are defended and our rights are going to be preserved. Now, which party they're a member of, it doesn't really matter, but from what we are seeing in just looking at the bills being proposed and passed in Albany, those party members are Republicans. The Democrats are not interested in talking to us and proposing bills that we want. Again, if anybody knows any of them, please introduce me to them. I am happy to sit down with them and try and work things together. But so far, the only response I've gotten is from Republicans in office. If you're a Democrat and you understand, believe in, and will support the Constitution, hey, run for office, right? Primary a Democrat who is sitting there and is proposing, co-sponsoring, voting for these horrible bills that abolish parental rights and, completely defy the Constitution of both the United States of America and the New York State Constitution. So, but if you're not interested in running for office, then where are your values more aligned, right? I mean, those are the questions you have to ask yourself. But there definitely needs to be a voter registration drive, right? People need to be out there actively registering people to vote. And we have to have an educational outreach, because once you get the people signed up to vote, they have to be motivated to vote. And then there have to be organizations at the ground level, which, again, this is where we, pair up with the existing infrastructure of the Republican Party locally and at the state level, but, get out the vote emails, get out the vote robocalls, get out the vote text messages, picking people up and driving them to the polls on election day, organizing these things. These are things that the Democrat machine are very good at. Very good at. And I didn't see any of that happening on the other side of the aisle last year.
For a lot of us, because it's just like a paradigm shift. Like, you were supposed to be the party that was like, I don't know. And I just feel like, wait a minute, what happened to our party that's like,
Yeah, it's gone. The JFK Democrat Party is dead. So people need to realize that. And I can't tell you, you are probably the, 1,000th lifelong Democrat that has come up to me in the past couple years that I've been doing this and said, they're crazy. They've gone crazy. There's no way I'm voting for them anymore. There's no way I'm giving them any money anymore. I'm going to go vote Republican. Okay, well, you're certainly not alone. Every state gets to make their own laws as to how elections are run. And because in our state, the supermajority of Democrats are making the laws more and more weak, it's harder to have strong election integrity. So we need to change who's in the legislature and get strong laws so that we can have better voter integrity and election integrity. So it's not going to get fixed until we change out those seats to the point where we have people that think like you and me and love the Constitution and want to have an actual, constitutional republic. It's very unfortunate that the media is against us on this. They don't want to hear two sides of an equation. That's what our society is built on, right? Whether it's facts, whether it's social interaction, whether it's law, whether it's medicine, you're supposed to have a discourse. You're supposed to have two sides of an equation so that people can hear ideas and debate, and then you make your own educated decision at the end of what you just heard. But the media has, especially in New York, has silenced that. I've had attorneys from other countries, South Africa, England, Australia, reach out to me and say, can you help us? Because we're facing the same kind of tyranny. So the word is getting out, but it's getting out in trickles, through alternative media instead of being, it should be, plastered everywhere. This is not about left or right, Democrat or Republican. This is about basic human rights.
have another lawsuit against us.
So the problem with lawsuits, and this is coming from a lawyer, the problem with lawsuits is that it's whack-a-mole. Okay, the whack-a-mole game? The mole pops up, you got the hammer, you try and whack him, but he ducks down, and then he pops up over here, and you try and whack him, and then he pops up over there, and you try and whack. We can't play whack-a-mole anymore, and we can't be on defense all the time, because you're not going to win back your republic if you're constantly on defense. I can't keep suing people for overstepping and doing things that they're not supposed to do, because look at all the injury that happens in the interim. Lawsuits take time. Lawsuits take a lot of time. Lawsuits take money. Lawsuits don't happen in 5 days. I pled for and I got expedited review on my case last year for the quarantines. Thank goodness. So I filed the first week of April. By the middle of July, it was resolved. That is extremely fast. That is extremely fast. And the AG removed my case to federal court, so I had to fight in federal court to get back into state court. And then they opposed the amicus brief by Assemblyman Goodell. They fought me tooth and nail. They, with hundreds of lawyers and all of our tax dollars, fought me by myself with no funding, pro bono, and that can't continue. That is not a winning course. It's not a winning course.
You are a David. You're up against Goliath.
Absolutely, absolutely. David and Goliath. There have been many articles written. If you go to my website, coxlawyers.com, I have a whole media section. A lot of the articles are entitled David versus Goliath, and David won, right? But you can't keep playing whack-a-mole. And I write a Substack. If anybody's not familiar with Substack, it's a website. And once a week, I post an article on my Substack. It's attorneycox.substack.com. It's free information. Please sign up and stay informed, please. And on one of my recent articles on my Substack, I talked about this, catch me if you can. The executive branch does what they want. They know they can't do it. They do it anyway. And they say, catch me if you can. Oh, you want to sue me? Okay, come get me. Because if you win, all right, maybe I'll stop doing what I'm not supposed to be doing in the first place. But if you don't win, I'm just going to keep doing this. I'm going to take this power, give it to myself, and I'm going to hang on to it until you knock me out in court. That's the whack-a-mole game that we can't play anymore. Do you remember a year or two ago when they tried to recall Governor Newsom out in California? It's because their state constitution has a provision that they can do that. We don't have that in New York. We need to get the people at the top, the people running the show, to share our values, and then we can do all these things that you're talking about, and we can put safeguards into place so that this doesn't happen again. But until we get there, we need the plan to get there. We need the plan to get there. And if anybody here heads up a group, is a member of a group, and wants to be involved in this initiative, please reach out and get involved. Uniting New York State is spearheading this, and I'm working very closely with them in doing it because nobody else is doing it, and I feel that this is the answer to how we're gonna fix this state. But we have to do it now. We have to. Our rights are disappearing at such a rapid rate. It's fascinating in a bad way.